Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this Honorable House do now take under consideration the following motion. That this Honorable House conveys its deepest sorrow on the death of Her Majesty the Queen, expresses its sincere condolences to His Majesty the King and other members of the royal family, and recognizes her association with Bermuda and her people.
No objections to that motion, is there? None. Continue, Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we convene in this rare fashion today, a joint session of the legislature to reflect on an historic life of committed service and incomparable duty. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II lived an incredible, almost surreal life, one of great privilege, but also a life dominated by certain core ideals to which we can all relate, irrespective of her elevated status. Mr. Speaker, in the last picture of the Queen, inviting her 15th Prime Minister to form a government, it is ironic to think that the frail hand extended to the new Prime Minister is a hand kissed by Winston Churchill, a hand that danced with Gerald Ford, a hand that waved to millions across so many countries. In extending that hand for that final time, the Queen demonstrated to the world that she had been true to the vow that she had made in 1947 to devote her life to service. Mr. Speaker, none of us, not even kings and queens, can decide the circumstances into which we are born. But it is what we make of our lives that determines how we are remembered, or if we become a footnote to the long story of life. Mr. Speaker, even at the age of 96, Her Majesty's death has shocked many. Her life and the constancy of her service meant that whether we warmed to the idea of the monarchy or not, the Queen was the single most immovable feature on the world stage. Mr. Speaker, even the world's most ardent Republicans have been compelled to salute Her Majesty's life of unparalleled devotion to duty. With her passing so soon after the observance of the Platinum Jubilee, we have been reminded that the 70 years during which the Queen served the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth have been marked by such remarkable global change. Change that she not only weathered, but through which she thrived. For all the tradition and the age-old ritual that surrounds the institution of the British monarchy, this Queen struck that enviable balance between preserving the past and embracing the future. Her coronation made history by being televised, permitting a technological intrusion into the centuries-old ceremony. And at her death, she was the owner of an iPad, amongst the latest iterations of the technology which came about during her 70-year reign. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty was variously known as a symbol or a figurehead. But in truth, Mr. Speaker, she was a leader. Asked why she tended to wear bright colors when on official engagements, the Queen famously replied, "I must be seen to be believed." Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty was forced to overcome a natural shyness and to mitigate the challenge presented by her small stature. Despite, and perhaps because of, these qualities, she determined early that leadership in or from the shadows would not be acceptable to her people. That steadfast devotion to duty that has been the refrain of every remembrance the world over, and I'm sure will be in this chamber today, meant that just 2 days before her death, she discharged the constitutional functions of her role, even when there were others who might have done so in her stead. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda has hosted numerous royal visits. However, none have generated the level of local interest as those of the Queen. Some honorable members will recall her most recent visit in 2009 for Bermuda's 400th anniversary of settlement. That visit culminated in a state dinner hosted by the then Premier Ewart Brown at Tucker's Point. Mr. Speaker, it is said that the menu that night featured various local dishes, from rockfish to seasonal vegetables. But the intrigue of the evening surrounded that local delicacy, cassava pie. After some diplomatic assurance from her host, I am pleased to share that the royal palate can be said to have sampled that unique Bermudian dish. Mr. Speaker, the embedded constitution of the institution of the British monarchy means that a king now assumes the throne, and with great pageantry, the end of one era and the dawn of another has been recognized around the world. Mr. Speaker, as I observed on the day of the Queen's passing, more than a monarch, she was the matriarch of a family, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. On behalf of the government and people of Bermuda, we extend our sincere condolences to His Majesty the King, the Queen Consort, their Royal Highnesses the Prince and Princess of Wales, and the entire royal family. The loss of a mother and grandmother is felt equally, whether her picture hangs with those with the rest of the family on a living room wall, rests on a bedside table, or whether her picture happens to be on the currency. Mr. Speaker, let us reflect on the Queen's decade of undimmed duty and service, and her quiet but steadfast leadership and devotion over a long and well-lived life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.